once again enveloped virus that contains positive stranded RNA viruses. This virus also contains spike-like projections or glycoproteins on the surface. And under the microscope, these spikes look like crowns, and this is why it is referred to as the coronavirus. The RNA genome seen in the virus is at a median length of 29 kb, making it the longest among all the RNA viruses. It is made up of 6 to 10 reading frames that are in charge of encoding both the replicase and the structural proteins from the virus. Each component of the virus is placed into a helical nucleocapsid that is surrounded by a lipid bilayer or envelope.
Now let's talk about the spike proteins. The coronavirus is usually made up of 3 proteins, and these are the membrane protein, the envelope protein, and the protein that we will be discussing, which is the spike protein. These spike proteins are said to allow viruses to penetrate host cells and cause infections. The spike protein is highly glycosylated, and this gives us the idea that it is a glycoprotein, and with this, spike proteins may contain carbohydrates just like sugar molecules. It is also a large type 1 transmembrane fusion protein that is made up of 1,160 to 1,400 amino acids. The amount of amino acids stated earlier depends on the type of virus. This protein is what determines the infection that may occur. The spike proteins have 2 significant portions, the S1 or the head portion, and the S2 or the body of the protein. So let's talk about the structure of the spike protein. The spike protein is, as mentioned earlier, a large type 1 transmembrane protein with amino acids ranging from 1,160 for avian infectious bronchitis virus, or IPV, to 1,400 for feline coronavirus. Since it includes 21 to 35 N-glycosylation sites, this protein is extensively glycosylated. The crown-like look is formed when spike proteins combined into trimers on the virion surface. All COVID spike proteins have the identical two-domain ectodomain, an N-terminal S1 domain that is important for receptor binding, and a C-terminal S2 domain that is responsible for fusion. The varied spike proteins, which have evolved into forms of different receptor interactions and responses to distinct environmental triggers of virus cell membrane fusion, indicate COVID variety. Next is the formation of an alpha helical coiled coil structure. The coronavirus spike protein is a fusion protein of class 1. This family of fusion proteins is characterized by the production of a helical coiled coil structure in their C-terminal portion sections, which are anticipated to have a helical secondary structure and form coiled coils. The S2 subunit is the most conserved part of the protein, but the S1 subunit can differ in sequence even amongst coronavirus species. An N-terminal domain and C-terminal domain make up the S1 subdomain. Both are receptor binding domains that can bind a variety of proteins and carbohydrates. Furthermore, coronavirus spike proteins have 2 heptad repeats in their S2 domain, which is a characteristic of, again, class 1 viral fusion proteins. Heptad repeats comprise a repetitive heptapeptide A, B, C, D, E, F, G, with A and D being hydrophobic residues characteristic of the formation of coiled coil that participate in the fusion process. The post-fusion structures of the HR for SARS-CoV and MHV have been solved, and they form the typical 6-helix bundle. By altering critical residues and conducting inhibition tests with HR2 peptides, the functional role of MHV and SARS-CoV-HR was verified. Now, the function of spike protein. The CoVs are widely distributed in nature, and their zoonotic transmissions into human populations can cause epidemic diseases. Enveloped viruses enter cells by attaching to host cells through viral glycoproteins and then fusing the virus and host cell membranes. These cell entry tasks are carried out by viral spike proteins in the coronavirus. The S proteins are distinguished from other viral and cellular membrane fusion proteins by their membrane-associated tails that are heavily palmitoylated. The S1 subunit recognizes and binds to receptors on the host cell when the virus interacts with it, whereas the S2 subunit is important for fusing the viral envelope with the host cell membrane. Now, we ask, how long does spike proteins last in the body? So the spike proteins, like other proteins created by the body, are expected to survive up to a few weeks, according to the Infectious Disease Society of America, or IDSA. Because of the spike proteins are not part of you, your immune system swiftly recognizes, attacks, and eliminates them. The immune system works out how to combat the true coronavirus through this learning the enemy process.
So now we move on to the mode of action. Spike proteins play a big role in going inside host cells and initiating infections. The spike proteins in coronavirus can be placed into two important functional subunits, and these are what was mentioned earlier, the N-terminal S1 subunit, which forms the globular head of the spike protein, and the C-terminal S2 region that forms the body of the spike protein and is directly embedded into the viral envelope. So when interaction with a host cell happens, the S1 subunit will recognize and bind to the receptors on the host cell. Meanwhile, the S2 subunit, which is said to be the most conserved component of the spike protein, will be in charge of fusing with the envelope of the virus with the host cell membrane. So the coronaviruses enter host cells by first binding to a cell surface receptor for viral attachment, then entering endosomes, and finally fusing the viral and lysosomal membranes. Coronavirus entrance is mediated by a virus surface-anchored spike protein. The spike protein appears as a trimer on mature viruses, with three receptor-binding S1 heads lying on top of a trimeric membrane fusion S2 body. The receptor-binding domain, or RBD, of SARS-CoV-S1 identifies angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 as the virus's receptor. The RBD alternates between a standing up and lying down state for receptor binding and immune evasion. Furthermore, the SARS-CoV spike must be proteolytically triggered at the S1 or S2 boundary to fuse membranes, causing S1 to dissociate and S2 to undergo a drastic structural alteration. The first part of this drastic change is called the pre-hairpin, where the linker within S2 becomes helical. The second part is the formation of a 6-helix bundle. And after these changes, the coronavirus will travel inwards towards its target cell.
So let's talk about the different variants of COVID-19. So there are a few variants of COVID-19, but we will only tackle two, namely the Delta and the Omicron variants. The Delta variant was first discovered in India, and it has now mutated to neutralize the prior varieties of antibodies. It has 13 to 17 mutations that modify the amino acid sequences of the variation, which were produced by prior mutations of multiple spike proteins. This variant is roughly twice as contagious than previous variants, and it may result in severe illnesses. Therefore, unvaccinated persons are at the highest risk of infection. Now, the Omicron variant, on the other hand, was first reported in South Africa on November 24, 2021, and it is distinct from the other variants because it contains a large number of mutations, which totals to 60. And there are 32 of the mutations impacting the spike protein. These carries the antigenic target of antibodies produced by infections with several widely spread vaccines. This variant may spread more quickly than others, such as Delta. However, it is unclear if Omicron promotes more severe illnesses. Now, people who have been completely vaccinated are prone to develop breakthrough infections and transfer the virus to others. The COVID-19 vaccinations are likely to be useful in avoiding serious diseases, and some monoclonal antibody therapies may be less successful as a result of this variation.
Let us now proceed with the dangers of spike proteins. The severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 is the virus that is driving the worldwide outbreak of COVID-19 illness. SARS-CoV-2 and other viruses are able to infiltrate host cells and induce infection due to the presence of spike proteins. The spike protein also attaches to parasites, which line the small veins that go through the heart. This binding triggers a chain of events that disrupt normal cell function and may result in the release of inflammatory chemicals. There are two subunits in the spike protein, an S1 subunit and an S2 subunit. The receptor binding region of the S1 subunit is important for the virus's capacity to attach and infect human cells. Antibodies against the receptor binding domain of the virus have been shown to neutralize the virus or prevent it from attaching to a cell. Now moving on to the effects of spike proteins after medication. Knowing how dangerous the different COVID-19 variants can be in the body, it's really important for someone to take action upon it by getting vaccinated. A drug, a drug may have undesired effects, undesired side effects in addition to its intended effects. Although not all of these effects are likely to occur, it is still encouraged to apply medical treatment if such negative effects do happen. The most common side effects one can experience after getting vaccinated includes chills, fever, headache, joint or muscle pain, unusual tiredness or weakness, and signs of itching at the injection site. These common side effects usually don't need any medical attention, since they are just indications that your body is still adjusting to the effects of the medicine. However, if these side effects still continue and bother you for quite a while, it is much better to seek help from professionals so that severe effects will be prevented. One of the main strengths of spike proteins is that it lets a virus enter the cell, which are then used as a component found in vaccines that will help the immune system to fight back against the COVID-19 virus. This process works when the immune system quickly identifies and attacks the spike proteins because it recognizes them as not part of the cell. Another point will be some false claims about the toxicity and how spike proteins in COVID-19 vaccines negatively affect the person's health. Despite having such claims, there is still not enough evidence to prove that the spike proteins are harmful to the body.
Now that we have encountered this topic, we will talk more about the prevention in regards to COVID-19. So there are a few safety measures an individual must take in order for them to avoid having COVID-19. These would be by getting vaccinated, by keeping a physical distance of 1 to 2 meters from other people, wearing a properly fitted mask, and by always cleaning your hands with soap or with alcohol-based hand sanitizers. All these I have mentioned are already proven to have helped protect us or lessen the effects that the virus may bring to us. So we will now move on to the treatments. So there is no cure yet that could help eradicate the virus, but there are a few medications that would be taken for us, that we could take rather, for us to only suffer the effects of COVID-19 moderately. A few of these are the antiviral medications mentioned in the slide, which are the Veklury, baricitinib, casirivimab, and indevimab. All these mentioned are FDA-approved medications that help overcome the infections that the virus brings, and these would also help the individuals heal quicker. If an individual is experiencing lesser effects of the virus, then they may take pain relievers like ibuprofen and also cough syrups to help them with their treatment. Aside from taking these medications, it is also advised to have enough rest and to increase your fluid intake. Now let us proceed to the conclusion and summary. So COVID-19, as mentioned earlier, contains spike-like projections or glycoproteins on the surface. And under the microscope, these spikes look like crowns, and this is why it is referred to as the coronavirus. Spike proteins play a big role in going inside host cells and initiating infections. From all the information presented, it is clear that the coronavirus is a complex and highly structured danger that we are facing. There are multiple mechanisms at play that contribute to why it has affected so many people, and we have discussed some of them with you today. Despite this, there are definite ways to help prevent yourself from getting the virus or make you feel better even with this. This means the virus is not an enemy that we cannot handle. So always remember, though, to keep the tips we have given you in mind and to make sure to stay informed all the time. So we thank you for listening and watching our presentation, and we are now ready for your questions and inquiries.
Bravo! That was very informational, group number 1. It is really fascinating to know how spike proteins work, Mars, no? Now, let us allow the audience to ask a few questions for clarifications if they have any questions in mind. The question table is now open.
All right, so now let us start reading the questions provided by the other people in this webinar. So from Team 5, Zoe says, since you have mentioned that the virus survives on body and transmits through droplets, how long does it last on surfaces, since it can also be contracted through coming in contact with contaminated surfaces? So anyone from the group, may you please answer this question?
Hello, Zoe. Thank you for that question of yours. I see that you really did pay attention to our webinar presentation, because you asked us this question. So our answer, my group, our answer is that although there is no specific survival time of the virus on varied surface, it can last for a few hours up to several days depending on varied condition like the type of surface, the temperature, or humidity. Typically, coronavirus survives longer when temperature is lower. That would be our answer for your question, Ma'am Zoe.
Thank you for answering her question. So now let us proceed to the next question. From team number 2, I heard that you talk about Vectory. What type of medication is Vectory?
Thank you, number 2, for that question. Based on our research, Vectory is an antiviral medication that is used to treat patients that are affected with the virus.
All right, thank you for answering the question. Let us move on to the question from Team 4 by Ashley. What is the relationship of sugar and spike protein?
To answer Miss Ashley's question, sugars found on the surface of human cells influence COVID-19 infection, according to a University of Alberta-led study. These sugars, known as glycans, are made of sialic acid and a class of biomolecules that are essential for cell structure, energy storage, and system regulation. Macaulay explained that up to 50% of all viruses that infect our cells, the most well-known of which is influenza, and it binds to sugars on cell receptors to gain access and infect the cell. Researchers also found out that a carbohydrate or sugar called heparan sulfate, which is found on cell surfaces, may play a critical role in the novel coronavirus's ability to infect cells. The researchers also found that heparan sulfate is necessary for SARS-CoV-2 infection. Using molecular modeling, they also identified where heparan sulfate binds the virus. They also found it interacts with a key part of the spike protein known as the receptor binding domain, or RBD. And that's all.
Thank you, Andre, for answering Ashley's question. So next up, we have a question from Team 3 by Anne. How to detect highly glycosylated protein?
So, hello, Anne. Thank you for asking that question. So, from our research, we have actually found out that there are 2 types of methods that can be used to detect glycosylated proteins. And these are the staining and affinity-based methods. And aside from that, I've noticed that we haven't answered the question that ma'am gave yet, which is, what is the reason why spike proteins are glycosylated? So to answer that question, ma'am, Spike proteins may contain carbohydrates, just like as we mentioned earlier in our presentation. And because of that, that is what actually allows them to be glycosylated, just because of the reason that they contain carbohydrates, and this gives them a relation to sugar molecules. So that is all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sharifa, for answering Team 3's question, as well as Mom's question. That was very informational, group number 1, and very, very interactive, truly. So now, let's talk about vaccine for COVID-19. What we know and what we don't know. mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna, which will be tackled by group number 2. The virtual floor is all yours. Once again, thank you, group 1.
Thank you, Maria. Pag-present na si Lynn. Okay, before we will start, we will have some technical check muna. Madunggan ko, Bettina? Si Lynn?
Yes, Kate. Madunggan ka.
Okay, madunggan sad mo. Okay, so without further ado, so I think we would start na. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Vaccine for COVID-19, What We Know and What We Don't Know, wherein we are going to focus on mRNA vaccines, namely Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines. So I am Kate Galiamaso,
And I am Bettina Manuel, your host for
your
today.
host for today.
So before we proceed, let us first have a quick kamustahan. So how is everyone feeling this evening? Feel free to react to any emojis, please, on the comment section below. Guys, you go comment on emojis, please. So how about you, Parker? How are you feeling right now?
Okay, so Angel posted some sort of emoji, right? So yes, partners, so I am actually really in a good mood right now, no, because I have such enough sleep last night. So how about you, partner? How are you?
Good. I'm also really excited also for this evening's webinar. I've been really looking forward to this event to share a lot of insight about the vaccines, like since we are in the middle of a pandemic. So I hope this webinar could also serve as an awareness as well.
Okay, so since we are both excited, let's not make this too long and go on with the webinar. So are you guys also excited? So I can see here you're still commenting, chatting your feelings through emojis, right? Okay, so Bettina?
Okay, so we hope that everyone will participate also throughout the webinar and of course gain a lot of insights.
And of course, don't forget to use the hashtag webinar 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. So now, of course, before we turn over to our first presenter, we would like to have a short interactive game time as a preliminary session for our webinar today. So let me share first my screen. Okay. So as you can see the screen, we would like everyone to access the website www.menti.com in another browser or in your phone or any device and enter the code as you can see here in the screen. Or you can just copy paste our comment in the chat box. Okay, so Bettina?
Okay, so this is just a really small interactive game, everyone. So I hope everyone will participate, please.
So let me ask first, while everyone is still accessing the website, what is this game all about, Bettina?
This game is called Debunking Myths. So let's see how many of you have knowledge or stock knowledge, already in your minds that is related to our webinar this evening.
So all we have to do is to click the option myth if you think it's a myth and fact if you think it's a fact. So I think everyone is ready. So let's start with the first question.
Okay, so statement one, COVID-19 vaccines cause new variants of the virus. Is it because of the vaccines that there are new COVID-19 variants emerging today? So put the response on the poll, please, if you think it's a myth or a fact. Let's see. Okay, well, a lot are answering myth. Nobody answered fact. Okay. So, where are the others? Okay, so the answer is myth. Vaccines do not create or even cause any new variants of the COVID-19. New variants often happen because the virus that causes the COVID-19 constantly changes through a natural ongoing process of change. That even the COVID-19 vaccines that were several variants of the virus, looking ahead, variants are expected to continue to grow or emerge as the virus continues to change.
Okay, so let's proceed now for the, they are answering na, no? So now for the second and the last question actually. So a COVID-19 vaccine will alter my DNA. Okay, so there is one person who answered fact and 4 persons answered myth. So what do you think, guys? Okay. Okay, so the answer is actually myth. So COVID-19 vaccines do not change or interact with your DNA in any way. So both mRNA and viral vector COVID-19 vaccines deliver instructions
Okay, I think nawala si Kate. So to continue na lang her question, part of the poll, it is a myth because COVID-19s do not
so
change. Kate?
Okay, sige, go Bettina. Thank you. Stop me na lang. Sige. Continue.
Okay. Because COVID-19 vaccines, again, do not change or interfere with any of our DNA in any way. So both mRNA and viral vector COVID-19 vaccines deliver instructions, which is the genetic material, to our cells to build protection against the virus that caused COVID-19. However, the material never enters the nucleus of the cell, which is where our DNA is kept. So to be safe, COVID-19 vaccine does not alter our DNA.
Okay, thank you, Bettina. So the source of this are from CDC or Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, which you can see on our references. So now, since we are quite energized and being interactive so far, so let me turn it over to Bettina again to discuss about our learning outcomes for today's.
Okay, to formally go about to our webinar, our learning outcomes for this evening or the flow of this webinar is, in what we know, we would have a brief insight on what is COVID-19 and what is a vaccine, and then the available vaccines administered in the Philippines. On the other topic, on what we don't know section, we would tackle about mRNA vaccines and how it works. Okay, so after knowing this, let me turn over the spotlight to our first speaker. So please help me welcome Ms. Samantha Celine Paduit, Please kindly react heart emoji, guys, if you are still there.
So pleasant evening to everyone. So I hope you've been listening attentively well. So let us now start with the webinar proper. So first, I think we already have a gist or we're already familiar with the word COVID-19, right? So here, as a review, let me just give a brief description on what is COVID-19. The novel coronavirus disease, or also known as COVID-19, took the world by surprise. As we all know, schools were suspended, businesses were temporarily closed down, and we are also forced to stay at our homes. The novel coronavirus is a virus that emerged and posed a global threat to humankind because it is a fatal illness that causes further damage than just the well-being of a person, but also to everything surrounding them. Specifically, it is a virus that penetrates into one's body and moves down through your respiratory tract, particularly with a person's lungs and heart, making it difficult to breathe air. Now we already know about COVID-19. Let us now proceed to the next term, which is what is a vaccine? Vaccines, in simpler definition, are commonly a type of medicine. It is a medicine that trains the immune system so that it can fight off diseases. Basically, it serves to protect us humans from getting infections that are caused by bacteria and viruses. Vaccines are also considered as immunization because both immunization and vaccines take advantage of our immune system. Because, like what I have said, it trains our immune system to protect us from getting diseases. And also take note, vaccines are designated to prevent you from getting a disease or a virus. But unfortunately, it would not entirely cure you or treat you once you get the disease or virus itself. So just a quick question or a quick survey question because it is in connection to the next topic that I would be discussing. So whom among you here are already fully vaccinated? Just react thumbs up in the chat box to see if you're still listening. So now let us know the total COVID-19 vaccine dose administered here in the Philippines. As presented in the screen, 57,254,482 people already have received their first dose here in our country. Secondly, we have 50,627,196 received their second dose, which would indicate that they are already fully vaccinated. And lastly, 2,207,941 people already received their booster dose. So all in all, as of January 4, 2022, which was yesterday, the total COVID-19 vaccine dose administered here in the country is 110,089,619, which there is an average of 401,730 daily doses in the last 7 days. Now that I have presented to you the statistics of the COVID-19 vaccine dose administered here in the Philippines, now let us now proceed to the statistics of the efficiency of the COVID-19 vaccines, which is presented in your screen again. Pfizer and BioNTech has an efficiency percentage of 95%, following by Moderna, 94%, following by the Gamaleya Scientific Research Institute, 92%, Novavax, which is 89%, and the AstraZeneca, which is 70%, and the Johnson & Johnson, which is 66%, and lastly, the Sinovac, which is 50%. Now the statistics are all over. Let us now answer this question. What are the vaccines present in the Philippines? And just a quick history about them. So since most of us already been vaccinated, so we all know that there are different vaccines made for COVID-19, which all of them have one thing in common, which is to help us protect us from getting COVID-19. Vaccines available in the Philippines are just Pfizer BioNTech, CoronaVac, or also known as Sinovac, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Janssen, and many more. All of these vaccines were actually made outside the Philippines. They were just sent here for us to get vaccinated. First, we have Pfizer. which is from an American corporation called Pfizer in New York, and BioNTech is a German biotechnology company based in Germany. They developed the Pfizer vaccine. Second, we have is the CoronaVac, or called Sinovac. It's actually based from a Sinovac Biotech Life Sciences in Beijing, China, which is common. They're common for research, developing, manufacturing, and commercializing vaccines. Third, we have is Moderna. Most of this vaccine is actually developed by a U.S. biotech company, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Next, we have is Johnson & Johnson, which is commonly a one-shot vaccine, which was carried out at Janssen's launch facility in Leiden, the Netherlands. And lastly, we have is AstraZeneca, which is produced by a team from Oxford University and a pharmaceutical company called AstraZeneca. Now that we already done with the what we know part, so let us now proceed the what we don't know, which will be presented by Ms. Kate Galamaso.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Celine. So now we are heading to the what we don't know part, but disclaimer, we are not implying that all of us has no knowledge about this, because maybe some of us already know about the topics that we will be discussing in this part. However, we assume that maybe some of us would like to know more about mRNA vaccines, which is actually the focus of the what we don't know portion. But before that, let us know first, how do vaccines differ? Because there are actually different kinds of vaccines, right? Like viral vector vaccines, mRNA vaccines, and many more. But again, for this webinar, we will only focus on the mRNA vaccines. Okay, so how do vaccines differ? Vaccines differ in their composition and how they trigger the immune response to create antibodies. These antibodies protect the body from microorganisms and serve as protection once a person gets infected with disease. And vaccines can be inactivated, weakened, or killed copies of the whole or part of the virus or bacteria, or the genetic product like mRNA vaccines that creates protein copies without causing disease. So, what are mRNA vaccines? So messenger RNA, so I think we have talked about mRNA, right? So messenger RNA or mRNA vaccines teach our cells how to make a protein that will trigger an immune response inside our bodies. So like all vaccines, mRNA vaccines benefit people who get vaccinated by giving them protection against diseases like COVID-19 without risking the potentially serious consequences of getting sick. So the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines are messenger RNA vaccines. So let us watch this short video from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health to have an insight regarding with mRNA vaccines.
mRNA vaccines do not contain any pieces of the virus. Instead, the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine teaches our own cells to make the quote-unquote spike protein found on the surface of the coronavirus, triggering an immune response. In short, they help our bodies produce antibodies specific to the virus, along with T cells that also confer immunity. That sounds great, right?
Okay, thank you. So let us now proceed. So I hope you've gained some little insights from that short video. So let's have it quite deeper now. So how mRNA vaccines work? So to trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into our bodies, but not mRNA vaccines. Instead, mRNA vaccines use mRNA created in a laboratory to teach our cells how to make a protein or even just a piece of protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. And then that immune response, which produces antibodies, what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our body. Okay, so now let's have a more clear overview now. Let's have this step by step. So first, COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle. So those who are vaccinated already, you know that you will be injected in your upper arm muscle. So then the mRNA will enter the muscle cells and instruct the cell's machinery to produce a harmless piece of what is called the spike protein. So the spike protein is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID-19. So after the protein piece is made, our cells break down the mRNA and remove it. So next, our cells display the spike protein piece on their surface. So our immune system recognizes that the protein doesn't belong there. So this triggers our immune system to produce antibodies and activate other immune cells to fight off what it thinks is an infection. So this is what your body might do to fight off the infection if you got sick with COVID-19. So lastly, at the end of the process, our bodies have learned how to protect against future infection from the virus that causes COVID-19. So that's it. So I hope you understood how do mRNA vaccines work. So now, since we already have knowledge about it, let us proceed to the available mRNA vaccines, which are the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, which will be discussed by Ms. Bettina Manuel.
Thank you, Kate. So once again, good evening, everyone. Let us first start off with the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. So just a quick recap, what is the Pfizer vaccine? It is a vaccine produced by an American corporation called Pfizer and a German biotechnology company called BioNTech. How is this vaccine effective? Pfizer vaccine has a really high percent of effectiveness, which was 97% in preventing death from COVID-19. So the first dose protection sits at 80%, and it rises to 97% following the second vaccination. The question is that, is the second vaccine dose the same as the first? First and second dose of the vaccine are quite similar, but they actually work in different ways. So the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine will actually help the immune system create a response to the virus that causes COVID-19. Meanwhile, the second dose acts as a booster for this protection. So this breaks the two doses, gives the body a chance to create the immune response. And then before the second jab works, it delivers another spike in COVID-19 antibodies. So after the Pfizer vaccine, let us now continue to the Moderna vaccine. Moderna vaccine. How well does this vaccine work? So based on clinical trials, people aged 18 years old and older, the Moderna vaccine works and is effective 94.1% at preventing laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 infection in people who received the two doses and had no evidence of being previously infected by the virus. So the vaccine is also very highly effective in clinical trials at preventing COVID-19 among people of diverse age, sex, race, and ethnicity categories, and among people with underlying medical conditions. After this, let us continue to the most frequently asked questions about vaccines. So question number one, do not take the vaccine. People with history of severe allergic reaction to any components of any vaccines should not take this or any other mRNA vaccines. Vaccination is recommended by doctors for older people due to the high risk of contracting COVID-19. Very frail older persons with anticipated life expectancy of less than 3 months should be individually assessed by doctors. The vaccine should not be administered to persons younger than 18 years of age because it is still pending results for further studies. The next question is, So why does side effects occur? So the side effects usually occur within the first few days of getting the vaccine. And we all know this because we have been briefed while we are in the vaccination site. So experiencing side effects after getting vaccinated means the vaccine is actually working and that our immune system is responding the way it should. So vaccines are safe and getting vaccinated will help protect us against COVID-19. Next question. Can I or you still get COVID-19 after I have been vaccinated? That answer is yes. The maximum level of protection from COVID-19 vaccines is not reached until several weeks after full vaccination. So this means that once you get the full vaccination, you don't get full immunity until 2 to 4 weeks after the second dose. Our immune system is very down at that time, so we really have to be careful of going out. Ask, how long does protection from COVID-19 vaccine last? So that we still don't know exactly how long protection from the COVID-19 vaccines last. But current data from studies show that people have strong protection against serious illness and death for at least 6 months. That is all for my topic.
Before we end our webinar, we present to you the overall conclusion, which has 4 points to be made. First point we have is that COVID-19 is a virus that penetrates into one's body and moves down through your respiratory tract, particularly with the person's lungs and heart, making it difficult to breathe air. Second point is that vaccines mimic the virus and triggers the body's creation of antibodies. These antibodies will then provide protection once a person is infected with the virus already. Third point we have is that mRNA vaccines teach our cells how to make a protein or even just a piece of protein. This protein would then trigger our immune response inside our bodies. This immune response would then produce antibodies that protect us from getting infected. And lastly, there are certain circumstances if a person should be vaccinated or not, just like what we have stated earlier.
Well, that was interesting. What do you think, Mars?
Indeed, Gab, that was an interesting discussion. I also enjoyed the interactive games. Thank you, Group 2. Or how about the watchers? What can you say about it, guys? The question table is now open.
Okay, to proceed with the first question coming from Team 5 by Dinah. Can I still get COVID-19 after I have been vaccinated?
Okay, hello from Team 5 right there. So let me answer your question. No? So we actually stated it from a while ago. So actually, yes. So you can still, the maximum, you can still get COVID-19 after you got vaccinated because the maximum level of protection from COVID-19 vaccine is not reached until several weeks after full vaccination. So if you have a 2-dose vaccine, this means that you don't get full immunity until 2 to 4 weeks after the second dose. So you can still become infected and ill during this time. So it's because your body needs to process it so that you will be immune from such virus.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Kate. To proceed with the second question by Rachel of Team 4, can you state again how mRNA vaccines work in a brief way?
Rachel from Team 4. Thank you for that question. Based from the video that we have watched earlier, the short video one, in a brief way, mRNA vaccine actually create, which then this spike protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. Then this immune response actually produces antibodies, which is responsible for protecting us from getting infected if the real virus enters our body. So that's how mRNA vaccines work.
Once again, thank you. And last but not the least, from Team 1, what happens if a serious adverse event or side effect is reported after vaccination?
I will be answering that. Thank you so much for that question. So, as to any vaccine, it is very important to closely monitor or watch the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccines that are used in the immunization programs. If, if there comes a serious health problem, it is to be reported following vaccination, and then a thorough investigation should take place by the public health program in the country. This is most unlikely to happen because, as we all know, in vaccination sites, we are screened by doctors to see if we have anything that may have or that may counteract the vaccine.
Okay, so to add lang with Bettina answer, so I think if a serious or adverse event or side effect is reported, so I think you should go directly to the healthcare professionals, because I think because it's not actually normal to have such adverse side effects. I mean, it's normal to have side effects, but such serious side effects is not that normal according to our research. And also, the vaccines are really tested before it is given out to the public, right? So having adverse effects is not normal, and it should be directly sent to the healthcare professionals, because there might be more underlying issues. Underlying issues behind it. So, or maybe it's a new variant, no? So that's it. So that's it.
Okay, I guess that is all for group number 2. And thank you once again. And it seems like everyone has been consistently paying attention so far. Now, let us hear it from group number 3 about updates on clinical trials of COVID-19 drugs and vaccine, mRNA vaccines, which are Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech. The virtual floor is all yours.
Audible. Mic check, mic check. Okay na guys?
Donggan bay, donggan na Seb.
Nice, thank you, thank you. So, good evening everyone. We are group 3. I am Sebastian Ray Lumakang.
I am Anduis B. Perpetua.
I am Jeffrey Peter B. Huang.
And I am Maria Rose Anthony E. Menyoza.
Missing one.
We already said our names. Go, Seb.
Let's continue on. And we are going to talk about the updates on clinical trials of COVID-19 drugs and vaccine, specifically on 2 types of mRNA vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech vaccines. Next slide, please. Loading pa. And here are the table of contents, starting from the introduction and background of the topic. then how this type of vaccine works, the effects, and the various data about the vaccine, and then we end in with the conclusion. First, let's have a brief introduction of mRNA vaccines. So, loading. The mRNA vaccine is a new type of vaccine that allows your body to trigger an immune response without using the actual germ to train your immune system. Instead, it trains your immune system to use a piece of the virus and will later protect you from getting infected or sick if you encounter the actual virus. More of this will be later explained by Miss Maria Rose Minyoza. Next slide. So these are the ingredients that are in the vaccine, which is, of course, the mRNA, the only active ingredient in the vaccine, the lipids that protect the mRNA, salts to help balance the acidity of its acidity and keep the components of the vaccine from separating or breaking down, and sugar to maintain its shape during freezing. Next slide. There it is. So although both Pfizer and Moderna are both mRNA vaccines, they are still different in a way. The positively charged lipids used in the nanoparticles for Pfizer, which is Pfizer BioNTech, which is labeled A in the image, and Moderna, which is labeled B in the image, lipid nanoparticles are the most clinically advanced non-viral gene delivery system. Nanoparticles safely and effectively deliver nucleic acids, overcoming a major barrier preventing the development and use of genetic medicines. We will now go on to how the vaccine works, to be discussed by Miss Maria Rose.
Okay, thank you, Seb. So now moving on, we will talk about how these mRNA vaccines work. First, let's talk about how these mRNA vaccines work in general. So messenger RNA is a type of RNA that is necessary for protein production. So in cells, mRNA uses the information in genes to create a blueprint for making proteins. I'm sure we all know this from our chemistry lectures. And once cells finish making a protein, they quickly break down the mRNA. So mRNA vaccines use mRNA created in laboratory to teach our cells how to make a protein, or even just a piece of protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. And once produced, antibodies remain in the body so that the immune system can quickly respond if ever the person is exposed to the virus again. So lastly, mRNA vaccines work by introducing a piece of mRNA that corresponds to a viral protein, usually a small piece of protein found on the virus's outer membrane. So as a part of a normal immune response, the immune system recognizes that the protein is foreign, like what was mentioned in the previous group, right? It is foreign, so it produces specialized proteins called antibodies. Antibodies can help protect the body against infection, and by recognizing individual viruses or other pathogens attracting to them. So now let us talk about how these Moderna and Pfizer works. First, let's talk about how Moderna works. So first of all, the mRNA inside is covered with an oily shell. So the mRNA molecules are very fragile. So to protect the vaccine, Moderna wraps the mRNA in oily bubbles made of lipid nanoparticles, which were mentioned by Sebastian a while ago. Next, this is when the mRNA enters the cell. So after injection, the vaccine particles bump into cells and fuse to them, releasing mRNA. The cell's molecules read its sequence and build spike proteins. As you can see in the illustration, these are the spike proteins. And our cells they display these spike proteins on their surface. Next is spotting the intruder. So the cell presents fragments of the spike protein, like what I mentioned a while ago, on its surface. When other cells called helper T cells, which is this one in the illustration, they detect these fragments, and then the helper T cells can raise the alarm and help marshal other immune cells to fight the infection. So after that, it's proceeding to the making of the antibodies. So this is another immune cell called the B cell. So in the illustration, you can see this is the B cell. So they bump into the coronavirus spikes on the surface of vaccinated cells. As you can see, it's like they perfectly match there. So a few of the B cells may be able to lock onto the spike proteins. And if these B cells are then activated by helper T cells, which is this one on the illustration, they will start to multiply and pour out antibodies that target the spike protein. So with the helper T cell, the B cell is able to produce these secreted antibodies. Next, after that is stopping of the virus. As you can see, we have in the illustration, antibodies and the virus. So the antibodies, they can latch on the coronavirus spikes, as you can see in the illustration. This marks the virus for destruction and prevent infection by blocking the spikes from attaching to other cells. And in case you don't know what antibodies are yet, antibodies help protect the body against infection by recognizing individual viruses or other pathogens. And then last but not the least is the killing of infected cells. So the antigen presenting cell, which is this one in the illustration, in case the text is too small, right? So these antigen presenting cell, they can also activate another type of immune cell called the activated killer T cell. This activated killer T cell is what seeks out and destroys any coronavirus infected cells that display the spike protein fragments on their surfaces. So hopefully with these illustrations, you're able to visualize and really understand how the Moderna vaccine works. So moving on. So what happens in the body when you have the Moderna vaccine? First, it sends the body cells instructions for making a spike protein that will train the immune system to recognize it. So the immune system will then attack the spike protein the next time it sees one. Second, there are studies that suggest that immune memory resulting from the Moderna vaccine, even at low doses, is long-lasting. So there is a guaranteed immunity to the virus. Lastly, it's possible that in the months after vaccination, the number of antibodies and killer T cells will drop. But the immune system also contains special cells called memory B cells and memory T cells. So these memory cells are what might contain information about the coronavirus for years or even decades. Next, let's talk about how well Moderna vaccine works on virus mutations. So according to studies, Moderna's vaccine may provide protection against the alpha and beta variants. In June 2021, Moderna reported that studies showed its vaccine is effective against the beta, delta, eta, and kappa variants. Although it did show it to be about 2 times weaker against delta than against the original virus. All right, next, moving on, after Moderna, we'll talk about the Pfizer vaccine. How does it work? Let's see. Actually, they are similar. They function similarly with the Moderna vaccine. So first is the mRNA is inside an oily shell. And then it enters the cell. And then spotting of the intruder with the help of immune cells, which spot the spike proteins. And then making of antibodies. Then stopping of the virus. And finally, the killing of infected cells. So your immune system can now help protect you from getting sick with COVID-19 because it's been trained to fight against infections caused by exposure to this coronavirus in the future. So they are very similar, but like what was mentioned by Seb a while ago, their lipid nanoparticles are what differentiate them from each other, as long as other factors. So once again, what happens in the body with the Pfizer vaccine? First, it delivers a tiny piece of genetic code from the SARS-CoV-2 virus to host cells in the body. And this gives those cells instructions or something like a blueprint that will help make copies of spike proteins, and then antibodies will be able to be made in the process. So these spike proteins stimulate an immune response, producing antibodies and developing memory cells that will recognize and respond if the body is infected with the actual virus. Lastly, what happens in the body is that immune cells in your body recognize a spike protein as a foreign substance and then start building an immune response to it. Next, how well does it work on virus mutations? So in early May 2021, the Pfizer vaccine was found to be more than 95% effective against severe diseases or death from the Alpha variant. This Alpha variant is first detected in the United Kingdom. And aside from the Alpha variant, we also have the Beta variant, which is first identified in South Africa. And these two variants, according to two studies, they are based on real-world vaccinations. So the Pfizer vaccine was found to be very effective. Next is the effects of mRNA vaccines, which will be discussed by Anne Perpetua.
Thank you, Maria. So the effects of mRNA vaccines. So we chose the most vulnerable group in the society, which is the older people, the pregnant women, and the children. So first, let's talk about the older people. Next slide, please. So for the older people, according to Dr. Vic, the older a person gets, the higher the risk. This is likely because patients lose immunity as they get older. The older they are, the more immune dysfunction they have. That causes them to have a higher risk of complications. Next slide, please. So the side effects of mRNA vaccines to older people. First is pain, redness, swelling where you get your shot. Second, tiredness. Third, headache. Fourth, muscle pain. Fifth, chills and fever. And sixth, nausea. So according to the CDC, irritating and uncomfortable they may be, these short-lived side effects are normal signs that your body is building protection. Effects that are stated above are a result of an inflammatory response that happens as the immune system sends the soldiers into encounter the vaccine and begin to respond to it. The systemic reactions are already your immune systems starting to rev up or becoming more active. Next slide, please. So we will talk about the pregnant women. So according to the World Health Organization, it recommends that pregnant women who are at high risk of exposure should consider vaccination because of the higher risk of severe COVID-19 infection in pregnancy and the increased risk of premature birth. So severe illness to pregnant women requires first, hospitalization. Second, the intensive care. Third, the need for ventilator or special equipments to breathe. Fourth, the increased risk of preterm birth and stillbirth. And lastly, the other risk of complications during pregnancy. So clinical trials have shown that COVID-19 are remarkably effective in protecting those aged 12 and up against infection by the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. The expectation was that they would work just as well to protect pregnant women. But because pregnant women were excluded from the initial clinical trials, hard data on their safety and efficacy in this important group has been limited. But good news, in August 2021, the CDC released new data showing that the currently available COVID-19 vaccines are safe for pregnant people, and on September 29, 2021, issued an urgent health advisory strongly recommending COVID-19 vaccination either before or during pregnancy. So next slide, please. The effects of mRNA vaccines on pregnant women. First is receiving an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy reduces the risk of infection. So recent studies from Israel compared people who were pregnant and received an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine with people who did not. So scientists found that vaccination lowered the risk of infection from the virus that causes COVID-19. Second, vaccination during pregnancy builds antibodies that might protect the baby. So when people receive an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy, their bodies will build antibodies against COVID-19, similar to people who are not pregnant. So antibodies made after a pregnant person received an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine were found in an umbilical cord blood. So this means that COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy might help protect babies against COVID-19. And lastly, COVID-19 vaccines have no side effects on the fetus or the breast milk. So there are no medical records that reveal adverse effects in women and their babies from a COVID-19. So vaccines do not contain live viruses. So being vaccinated does not pose risk to the baby. It is important to remember that with the vaccine injected into the arm, the body immediately absorbs the shot to stimulate and strengthens one's immune system. And lastly, for the children. So COVID-19 can make children very sick and cause children to be hospitalized. In some situations, the complications from infection can lead to death. In fact, COVID-19 ranks as one of the top 10 causes of death for children ages 5 through 11 years. So children are as likely to be infected with COVID-19 as adults and can get very sick from COVID-19, have both short and long-term health complications from COVID-19. And lastly, the spread of COVID-19 to others, including at home or at school. Since the FDA gave the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine emergency authorization to use in children that ages 5 to 15 years old and full approval to use in people that ages 16 years and older. So for those unvaccinated children ages 2 to 4 years old should wear a mask in public spaces and around people they don't live with. So the effects of mRNA vaccines on children. First is the cases of myocarditis, which is the inflammation of the heart muscle, and pericarditis, which is the inflammation of the outer lining of the heart, have been reported after Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccination of children ages 12 to 17 years. These reactions of cases are rare. Second, the serious health events after mRNA vaccination is rare. So just like what I said earlier, serious health risks are very rare. And third, a severe allergic reaction like anaphylaxis may happen after any vaccine, including mRNA vaccine, but this is also rare. And lastly, a child cannot get COVID-19 from any COVID-19 vaccine, including the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. So let's move on to data and statistics, which will be reported by Mr. Jeffrey Wang.
Thank you very much, Miss Anne. Yeah, data and statistics. So first, before I start, okay pa ba tadyang tanan? Kaway-kaway sa mga buhay pa dyan? Okay pa bang lahat? Nice, perfect. Now, sa pinaka-exciting part, no? Data and statistics. So we are going to talk about the findings of both Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. Next slide, please. So the Moderna and Pfizer mRNA vaccines against COVID-19 have shown greater than 90% effectiveness soon after the second dose. Studies suggest that protective immunity remains high with only slight decreases over 6 months. However, scientists are still working to understand how immunity against the virus develops after vaccination and changes over time. Researchers also believe that strong responses from both neutralizing antibodies and immune cells called T cells are necessary for immunity. Memory T cells linger in the body to recognize and protect against previously encountered pathogens. Recent studies indicate these may be crucial for lasting protection against the COVID-19. And now for the findings about Moderna. This graph, as you can see on the top left of our screen, was taken from the FDA, or Food and Drugs Administration. This graph shows just how well the group of more than 15,000 study participants who got the real Moderna shots were protected from the COVID-19 infection when compared to more than 15,000 also people in the study who got the placebo shot, or a shot where there is no mRNA in it. It was, and the placebo shots, as we can see, is indicated with the blue line. A second shot was given for the Moderna vaccines 28 days after their first shot. In the Moderna group that was vaccinated against COVID-19, there were only 11 cases of COVID-19 recorded. Once the two shot had ample time to take effect, roughly 14 days after the second vaccination, in the study control group, during the same testing period, which was roughly 2 months long, 185 people got sick from COVID-19. There were also no cases of severe COVID-19 among the vaccinated individuals. The control group had 30 very sick COVID-19 positive participants and 1 unfortunate death. Moving on, in the Pfizer vaccine. So, in this particular graph, the red line in this chart represents how many of the roughly 21,000 study participants in the control group who got the also placebo shot got sick. In the blue line represents the COVID-19 infection rate among the roughly 21,000 people who received the real Pfizer shot. Pfizer's mRNA vaccination course worked well in thousands of people of various ages, races, and sexes who tested it in 6 different countries. Comparing those individuals who got the Pfizer vaccine with those in the control group shows just how well the 2-shot vaccination course worked to prevent infection. The chart suggests that people who got the real Pfizer vaccine started to gain protection from the virus just 14 days after their first shot. Then 21 days in, they got their second and final shot. When compared to the Moderna, which was, 28 days between the first and second shot. After that, they were well protected from the virus for at least 2 more months. However, it takes some time for shots to take effect in the body, providing robust and full protection against the virus. Several people became sick with the COVID-19 after getting their first Pfizer shot, but got well long before receiving their second shot. 1 week after the second shot, the vaccines have shown to be much more effective at preventing infections. The 2-shot of the Pfizer vaccine had a vaccine efficacy of around 95%. Only 8 people got COVID after receiving both doses of the Pfizer vaccine and waiting a full week for the vaccination to take effect, roughly 28 days from the start of the trial. Only 1 person among those 8 have suffered a severe case of the disease. They were not hospitalized, however. Meanwhile, in the control group with no protection, cases climbed. After day 28, the control group recorded more than 160 infections with 3 severe cases, including 2 hospital admissions. So to conclude, no, both of the mRNA vaccines are highly effective against the severe COVID-19. On the surface, the vaccines are very similar. Both are composed of lipid nanoparticles filled with mRNA. When these mRNAs get into cells, the cell begin to produce the non-infectious viral spike protein they code for, which then triggers an immune response that trains and prepares the immune system to recognize the virus's spike exterior so that it can launch a swift defense against the real virus. It was found that there is an efficacy of 95% for Pfizer BioNTech and 94.5% for Moderna. At the end of the day, the focus is on defeating COVID-19. The following slides are the references that we have used that help us finish this webinar. On behalf of my group mates, Ms. Maria Rose Minyaza, Ms. Anne Luis Perpetua, Mr. Sebastian Ray Lumakang, and yours truly, Jeffrey Peter B. Huang, I hope you have learned something in this webinar. Thank you.
All right. Wow. Iba naman talaga our group, really. That was a delightful presentation. Now I know. How about you, Gab? Any realizations?
Indeed, Mars, no? I now understand how such vaccines work and function differently. And now, let's allow our blockmates to ask a few questions. I know your interests were also picked, just like ours. The question table is now open. Okay, for the first question by Team 5, why are salts included in the ingredients? What is its mechanism of action?
Oops, sorry, nakamute de ko. I will answer that question. That is a very interesting question, Hillary, Team 5. Salts with other ingredients work together to help balance the acidity in the vaccine with the acidity in our bodies, which is crucial in keeping the vaccine effective after the manufacturing process. They also keep components of the vaccine from separating or breaking down.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Sebastian. Moving on from the second question by Bettina of Team 2. Do mRNA vaccines affect a person's DNA?
I can answer that question for her. Thank you for the question, Bettina. So actually, they don't. So because the mRNA in the vaccine doesn't go near the part of the cell where DNA is kept, which is the nucleus. And it doesn't stick around the body for long since the mRNA is actually degraded within around 24 to 48 hours after the injection. So their only role in the body is to instruct, right? To instruct the body to make an immune response against the problem here, which is COVID-19. So after that, they are degraded. So they don't enter the nucleus and therefore they don't affect the DNA. Thank you for the question again.
Thank you for that, Mars. Moving on to the next question by Sharifa of Team 1. When will be the preferred month to get vaccinated for pregnant women?
So I will answer that question. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective at any stage of pregnancy. So to answer the question, after the first 12 weeks is necessary, and health experts always remind people to get vaccinated as soon as possible. And if you are with a pregnant woman in your household, or if Namoy kaila, always refer to the doctors when will you get your shot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne. And last but not the least, from Team 4, Angel Turalba, may I just clarify, does mRNA have something to do to protect them as they are being transported or moved? What coats and protects the mRNA in the vaccine?
So I will answer that question. Thank you, Gab, and thank you, Mr. Alba. So yeah, I am glad that you, I don't know, you've asked this question because it's really, um, it's really somewhat important now. So mRNA, the mRNA, the mRNA have a protective, have a protective like coating around it, no? It's called the lipid nanoparticles, no? These lipid nanoparticles is is what coats the mRNA, no? It's like a Christmas, like cover sa Christmas present, no? Kanang ano, yeah. So muna siya ang ga-cover siya when it is being transported through cellular membranes, no? And these lipid nanoparticles not only protects but also acts as a delivery vehicle to our cells. So yeah, I'm glad you've asked this question, Mr. Alba. So yeah, they do have, and it's called lipid nanoparticles. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Group 3. Magnifico. You were right about their interest getting piqued, Gab. But first, let's read here Hillary's statement. She said that her father developed mild stroke. So, sorry. So, Ali, I hope your father's okay now. And thank you for sharing that. I hope everyone is safe when they take the vaccines. Moving on. You guys are very consistent so far. Next up, Group 4 with their presentation about boosting immune system with vitamin C and zinc.
So good evening, everyone. We are from Team 4NH, and today our webinar is all about boosting the immune system with vitamin C and zinc. So before we start our webinar, it is important to be aware of our objectives for tonight. First is to know the importance and benefits of vitamin C and zinc. Second objective is to be familiar with its immunity-enhancing role, effects, and sources. Lastly, this webinar intended for its audiences to understand the effectiveness of vitamin C and zinc, its deficiency effects in the body, and what illnesses are avoided when boosting the immune system. Next slide. So what really is vitamin C? To start, vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, which means it doesn't become stored in your body. It helps your body absorb iron and supports regular growth and development. Vitamin C is important to include in your diet because your body does not produce or store it. So it is a vital nutrient for health as it helps form and maintain bones, skin, and blood vessels. So next, vitamin C occurs naturally in some foods, especially fruits and vegetables, as we all know. There are also vitamin C supplements available. So citrus fruits, broccoli, and tomatoes are among the foods that you must consume to have vitamin C. It is also important to note that while vitamin C or ascorbic acid is a necessary nutrient, too much of it can also be harmful. Now let's go over to another vital component of boosting our immune system, which is zinc. Zinc is necessary for a variety of bodily activities. It is a vital mineral that our body uses in countless ways. And in fact, zinc is the second most abundant trace mineral in our body after iron and is present in every cell. It helps the body create proteins and DNA, aids wound healing, and aids in childhood growth and development, in addition to strengthening the immune system. Aside from that, it has antioxidant qualities as well. Zinc is found in a variety of foods, including nuts, beans, broccoli, pork, meat, and fish. And just like vitamin C, it also comes in the form of a dietary supplement. Again, zinc is an essential nutrient, which means your body cannot create or store it. As a result, you must ensure a steady supply through your food, as zinc is a mineral that is essential for good health. Now, let us further understand the concepts of vitamin C and zinc. So for vitamin C, the suggested daily intake is that for adults, the recommended daily amount for vitamin C is around 65 to 90 milligrams a day, and the upper limit is 2,000 milligrams a day. Now, how is it important in the body? So the body needs vitamin C for various functions, right? So vitamin C helps the body produce collagen, L-carnitine, and some neurotransmitters. It is also an antioxidant and helps boost the immune system as well as enhances wound healing. Now, what does it fight against? Vitamin C's antioxidant activity may help reduce inflammation and lower the risk of developing various conditions, including some cancers. So we can really see just by taking vitamin C, we can already prevent a lot of illnesses. Now let's go over to zinc. The suggested daily intake for zinc is that adults should limit their intake of zinc to 40 milligrams or less per day. However, this does not apply to people with zinc deficiencies who may need to take high-dose supplements. So next, how is zinc important in the body? Zinc is considered a trace mineral, which means your body needs only a small amount of it to work properly. Still, it's important because of the role it plays in keeping you healthy. Zinc heals wounds and keeps your immune system humming and ready to take on threatening bacteria and viruses. It aids growth, DNA synthesis, immune function, and more. Finally, what does zinc fight against? As we all know, the body needs zinc for the immune system to work properly. It fights against delayed growth in children, a loss of appetite, changes in taste, a higher risk of infection, fertility problems, diarrhea, problems with wound healing, eye and skin lesions, problems with thinking, and other chronic illnesses. So with that, we can really see that there are a lot of health problems which we can prevent just by making sure that we take the right amount of zinc needed in our body. So just to summarize, if vitamin C is an essential vitamin, zinc, on the other hand, is a dietary mineral. However, both are antioxidants that defend against free radicals, unstable molecules that cause oxidative damage. Both are also important in our immunity, wound healing, etc. So from this, we can really say that indeed, vitamin C and zinc are vital in our body as it serves both the same yet also different purposes in our growth and overall well-being.
So as we all know, vitamin C plays a major role in our immune system. It is an antioxidant because of its ability to readily donate electrons. So for those of you who don't know what an antioxidant is, it is basically a substance that prevents or slows down damage to those cells caused by free radicals. So these free radicals are produced by the process of oxidation during normal cellular metabolism. So in order to inhibit or to stop the oxidation process, antioxidants are used. So because vitamin C is an antioxidant, it protects important biomolecules such as proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates from damage by oxidants that are produced during normal cell metabolism and through the exposure of toxins and pollutants. Vitamin C neutralizes the oxidative damage promoting hypochlorous acid that is produced in the activity of neutrophils. So vitamin C accumulates in phagocytic cells and enhances chemotaxis, phagocytosis, and microbial killing. Now, what effect does vitamin C have on COVID-19? So this vitamin is able to reduce the severity of COVID-19 symptoms and improve oxygenation. So there is no study that claims that vitamin C could treat COVID-19 alone. However, some studies did claim that vitamin C intake every single day reduces the duration of the severity of the symptoms of COVID-19. So as we all know, having severe symptoms of COVID-19 is what weakens us. So reducing the severity of these symptoms would significantly help us get better and recover from COVID-19. According to NIH in the year 2019, patients who received standard care achieved a 50% reduction in their symptom severity at 6.7 days. Compared with those patients who took vitamin C every day, it only took them 5.5 days for their symptoms severity to reduce by 50%. Furthermore, NIH claims in their study that intravenous intake of vitamin C improved oxygenation in patients within 7 days, compared to those who were just given standard care in which no improvement was identified. Now, where could we find such vitamins? Well, fruits and vegetables like strawberries, papayas, and red bell peppers are rich in vitamin C. In fact, they are actually richer in vitamin C compared to citric fruits such as oranges and lemons. It is advised that individuals who are in good condition should intake around 75 milligrams of vitamin C per day. However, intake may vary depending on your state of well-being. So if you're sick, then you would need to increase your vitamin C intake. Natural fruits are the best source of vitamin C as they are easily absorbed and utilized by the body.
Next, we shall get to know of zinc's role in our human body. So zinc supports a number of functions in the human body, right? So other than supporting our immune system, zinc contributes in fighting off invading viruses and bacteria, as well as in wound healing. The range of physiological functions of zinc is broad and can be observed in all tissues of the body. In general, zinc is required for DNA synthesis, cell division and growth, for protein synthesis, and macronutrient metabolism, as well as for the development and function of most body systems actually. Also, it has antioxidant properties to which it modulates immune response and exhibits antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. Next slide, please. When put around the context in boosting our immune system, zinc helps keep our immune system strong because it is necessary for immune cell function and cell signaling. A deficiency can lead into a weakened immune response. Zinc may relieve oxidative stress and may improve immune response by boosting the activity of T cells and natural killer cells, which help protect your body from infection. Second, zinc is also crucial for normal development and function of cells for mediating innate immunity, neutrophils, and natural killer cells. Lastly, the ability of zinc to function as an antioxidant and stabilize membranes suggests that it has a role for the prevention of free radical-induced injury during inflammatory processes. So multiple clinical trials were made for the use of zinc supplementation for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. In outpatients with COVID-19, results showed no significant decrease in the number of days required to reach a 50% reduction in a symptom severity score compared with a standard of care. The use of zinc in most trials was associated with reducing rates of in-hospital mortality, but yes, yet again, it showed unsuccessful results. Because zinc has not been shown to have a clinical benefit and can potentially be harmful, which is why the panel recommends against using zinc supplementation above the recommended dietary allowance for the prevention of COVID-19, except in a clinical trial. Next slide, please. Here we have a number of sources of zinc that we consume regularly.
Oysters contain more zinc per serving, but red meat and poultry provide the majority of zinc in a regular diet. Other good food sources include beans, nuts, fortified breakfast cereals, and dairy products. The recommended dietary allowance for elemental zinc is 11 milligrams daily for men and 8 milligrams for non-pregnant women. The amount of zinc that you need each day depends on your age, which is why zinc is a nutrient that people need to stay healthy.
Hi, I apologize for not using my account due to internet problem. Hello, madunggan ako? Madunggan ako?
Yes, Jel.
Yes.
Okay. Nagigamit ako sa account ni Johanna kay Koan, balay signal dito sa among balay. So, yeah. Anyways, so deficiency affects in the body. Sorry, Kyle. So, complementary roles in supporting components of both innate and adaptive immunity. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant that strengthens the body's natural defense. Antioxidants are molecules that boost the immune system. They do so by protecting cells from harmful molecules called free radicals. The benefits of vitamin C may include protein against immune system deficiency. This also includes cardiovascular disease, prenatal health problems, eye disease, and even skin wrinkling. Zinc is an essential micronutrient for human metabolism that catalyzes more than 100 enzymes, which facilitate many over-the-counter medications and natural remedies feature zinc due to its ability to boost immune function and fight inflammation. Zinc is also well known for its role in blood sugar control and insulin secretion. Insulin is the hormone responsible for transporting sugar from your bloodstream to your tissues. So today, let's proceed to summary of illness avoided with boosting immune system. So according to research, supplementing with certain vitamins, minerals, herbs, and other substances can help improve immune response and potentially protected against illness. However, it is important to note that no supplement will cure or prevent disease, especially nowadays, wherein a lot of lives have been affected due to pandemic. Thus, we must practice precautionary measures and safety methods to ensure our safety. Nari ko'y nalaktawan ka dyan. So, sa effects, ba ito sa effects? Sa effectiveness dito. Nagula pa ko kakuan sa effectiveness. Okay. Okay, effectiveness of both vitamin C and zinc. Okay, effectiveness of both vitamin C and zinc. Vitamin C and zinc hold central positions through their complementary roles in supporting components of both innate and adaptive immunity. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant that strengthens the body's natural defense. Antioxidants are molecules that boost the immune system. They do so by protecting cells from harmful molecules. So slide, sorry, jud kaayo. Slide 13 day ko na skip. So sa effects na ko. Effects of vitamin deficiency in the body. Vitamin C and zinc plays an important role in providing adequate nutrition and immune defense. Deficiencies of both vitamin C and zinc severely depress immune responses. Vitamin C deficiency occurs from a diet that is low in vitamins and minerals. Not eating fruits and vegetables causes deficiency in the body. Adults who are deficient become weak, weary, and irritable. This also leads to weight loss, nagging muscular and joint problems. Zinc is obtained through food and supplements. Not getting enough zinc causes zinc deficiency, which leads to a variety of physical ailments such as unexplained weight loss, wounds that won't heal, lack of alertness, decreased sense of smell and taste, diarrhea, loss of appetite, and open sores on the skin. So, thank you.
So that ends our webinar for today. I hope you were all able to grasp and learn a little something from our webinar. We apologize for the technical difficulties that we encountered. So on behalf of your hosts, Angel Toralba, Rachel Tan, and Angel Ramos, and yours truly, Ashley Sustinto, thank you everyone for listening, and don't forget to take your vitamins.
Thank you, Group 4, for that wonderful presentation. Now, the time has come. Prepare your questions, everyone, because the virtual floor is now open.
All right, we received a question from Team 2, Bettina. She asks, is vitamin C also effective with other new variants such as Omicron and the Delta variant?
Okay, so I will be the one to answer that question. Thank you, Bettina, for that question. So as I mentioned earlier, vitamin C itself does not directly treat patients with COVID-19, but instead what it does is it reduces the severity of the symptoms that the individual is experiencing. So to answer your question, just like COVID-19, vitamin C cannot treat the other variants directly, but it can reduce the severity of the symptoms that the person is experiencing.
Thank you, Ashley, for that answer. Next question from Team 5, Haley. Do people with weaker immune system more prone to COVID infection? If so, how does vitamin C boost the immune system?
Thank you for that question. It is indeed true that people who have weak immune system would most likely have a higher risk of COVID infection. It is because the body can't fight the disease, which makes it easier to catch bacterial infections and viruses, which creates a devastating effect on a person with a compromised immune system. Thus, as mentioned earlier, the benefits of vitamin C in boosting our immune system would help reduce the risk of illness and diseases such as COVID-19 infection, for which vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant that would help and protect cells from harmful molecules. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel, for answering Haley's question. Next, from Sebastian of Team 3. He wants to know, you mentioned that too much vitamin C can be harmful. What exactly happens if you overdose with vitamin C?
Is that question from Sebastian already? Right?
Yes po.
Sorry, my internet connection is not stable.
It's okay.
Thank you for that question, Sebastian. And yes, although too much dietary vitamin C is unlikely to be harmful, mega doses of vitamin C supplements might still cause the following, which are diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, heartburn, and many more. And aside from that, high doses can also result in falsely elevated blood glucose readings, which can be problematic for diabetics. Remember, too much or too little of something is not good. And for most people, a healthy diet provides an adequate amount of vitamin C. So in the end, we still need to be careful of our intakes, especially if these are supplements na vitamin C. That's all.
Thank you, Jel, for answering Sebastian's question. Oh, we have a question from Ma'am. So she asked, can you tell us more about high-dose intravenous vitamin C? To whom is this administered and what is the dosage?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. Based from my research, intravenous vitamin C can produce very high levels of vitamin C in the body. Researchers believe that these high vitamin C levels can be toxic to cancer cells, and intravenous high-dose vitamin C and cancer therapy. That's all.
Thank you, Jel, for answering Mom's question. Do you guys have any more questions?
May I add to what Angel said?
Yes, go ahead.
The question of Ma'am also stated that to whom this is administered and what is the dosage. So vitamin C injections are administered only to those people who need to who need their vitamin C levels to increase quickly, or when they're not able to intake oral supplements due to poor absorption or there are other reasons. And I guess the dosage would depend on how much the person would need it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for the additional information. Once again, are there any more questions? Specifically from team number 1, maybe? Okay. I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you, group 4, for a very clear presentation. Now, last but definitely not the least, here is group number 5 with their topic, virgin coconut oil, also known as VCO, as potential COVID-19 treatment. The virtual floor is all yours.
Good evening, everyone. We are from Chem 153 Block NH under Team 5. I am Hilary Pacoribot and my group mates are Zoe Reyes, Haley Sambilon, and Dina Vitorillo. Our topic for this webinar is about virgin coconut oil, VCO, as potential COVID-19 treatment. Next slide, please. To introduce this topic, let's first start from the roots. As we all know, a worldwide respiratory disease named coronavirus 2019 has caused significant morbidity and deaths. The normal response to injury or pathogenic infection is inflammation. In the case of COVID-19, it produces an excessive immune reaction in the cytokine storm. Or simply, there is an overproduction of immune cells and their activating compounds known as cytokines. So, Given that inflammation plays a key part in COVID-19 pathogenesis, it's critical to keep hyperinflammation under control. Thus, reduced viral infection of vulnerable cells is one intervention approach. So, you're probably wondering, how will we be able to reduce the production of the inflammatory cytokines? Next slide, please. Well, a lot of researchers are currently working on medications that specifically target coronavirus protease enzymes. But frankly, testing for these drugs will take months. But what if there is already a treatment candidate against the coronavirus that is natural, widely available, and that has been proven to be safe? Next slide, please. Virgin coconut oil, VCO. Is it a possible treatment? Well, currently, VCO is being studied in the Philippines, specifically research from the Department of Science and Technology and prestigious schools at Ateneo de Manila and University of the Philippines are trying to work on it. Well, all of which said that VCO may be a possible adjuvant treatment for COVID-19 patients, since patients with severe COVID-19 symptoms have shown to have cytokine release, right? So because of VCO's immunomodulatory effects, there's a chance that it may inhibit its production. So how did they say that this is possible? So we have research basis for this. Studies revealed that the mechanisms of action of VCO is mainly due to its compounds named lauric acid and monolaurin. Number one, research studies showed that monolaurin was able to reduce infectivity of 14 human RNA and DNA enveloped virus in cell culture by greater than 99.9%. How? It acted by disintegrating the virus envelope. Therefore, dali ra namatay ang virus daw. Number two, the Junin virus, which causes hemorrhagic fever, is an envelope virus featuring glycoproteins, so which is similar to COVID-19 virus. So based on mechanistic studies, it was concluded that lauric acid inhibited a late maturation stage in the replicative cycle of Junin virus. Basically, lauric acid was able to abrupt the further growth and development of the virus. Number three, a study in 1994 by Hornhung showed that in the presence of lauric acid, the production of infectious vesicular stomatitis virus was inhibited in a dose-dependent and reversible manner. Why? Because they observed that lauric acid did not influence viral membrane protein synthesis, because it actually prevented the binding of viral M proteins to the host cell membrane. So because of these three foundations, we can somehow hypothesize that there is a great chance that VCO will become a possible treatment candidate against COVID-19. Next slide, please. Let us now proceed to the biochemistry of COVID-19. Presented in this slide is a schematic representation of SARS-CoV-2 structure. First, it is a medium-sized virus. It seems small, but it's actually terrible because it has the largest mRNA genome. This viral mRNA serves both for translation of viral proteins, and it serves as a template for replicating the viral genome. Second, it is an envelope-positive stranded RNA, meaning it can act as messenger RNA and can be directly translated into viral protein synthesis by the host cell's ribosomes. Since genome replication is cytoplasmic, genomes of positive stranded RNA virus fold into complex structures. Third, the mRNA is encased in a nucleocapsid, meaning a nucleic acid surrounds and coats the virus. Fourth, it has a lipid bilayer, but don't worry, we could abrupt this by using soap and washing our hands. As for the corona transfer spike, it contains a glycoprotein spike peptimer, which allow themselves to attach to human cell receptors in upper or lower airways. Next slide, please. Let us now proceed to the coronavirus genome. It encodes 5 structural proteins. First, the S, spike proteins. It mediates receptor binding. This protein is located on the virus surface and contributes to forming a corona. And this is the reason behind the coronavirus getting its name. It anchors on virus envelope function in attaching coronavirus receptors and is responsible for the internalization. Number 2, the membrane protein assists viral assemble. The M protein, a transmembrane glycoprotein type 3, is the most abundant protein on the surface of the virus, which is the one giving its shape. Number 3, the nucleocapsid protein serves for the regulation of viral RNA synthesis. It may interact with the M protein during virus budding. So, N protein functions in attaching and assembling the viral RNA genome to a long nucleocapsid structure. The E, the small envelope protein, although it is necessary, scientists are yet to know its actual function in virus replication. The only thing we know now is that it is a small hydrophobic protein that contains 74 to 109 amino acids. Lastly, we have the HE hemagglutinin esterase glycoprotein. It helps in the attachment and destruction of certain sialic acid receptors that are found on the host cell surface. This is why dali ra kaayo makasulod ang kanina virus sa dali ra kay mahak sa mga virus ang ato ang natural code. So that's all for the introductory parts of this webinar. I will now pass the virtual floor to Zoe Reyes for the further deepening on the components of the virgin coconut oil.
Thank you so much for that very enthusiastic introduction, Ms. Hilary Pacaribot. So now we will go on to virgin coconut oil. So what is it anyway? Now, next slide, please. So virgin coconut oil is a saturated fat. It contains 80 to 90% saturated fatty acids. Virgin coconut oil is a type of coconut oil made from cold pressing the liquid from coconut kernel. Next slide, please. So as you can see on the screen, those are the chemical components of VCO. So virgin coconut oil is certified organic and it does not contain nor use chemicals generated from the lab. It contains acids, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates from the coconut meat. So as you can see, these are the fatty acids present in virgin coconut oil. Note, please, I would like everyone to focus on the fatty acid, lauric acid. It will be further discussed later on. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of virgin coconut oil? Number 1, it encourages the burning of fat. So virgin coconut oil can be identified as a fat that contains medium chain triglycerides or MCT. Studies have found that MCTs can increase the calories a person burns, hence why people who are aiming to lose weight include VCO in their diet because it promotes weight loss. Next slide, please. It is also a quick source of energy. So MCTs or medium chain triglycerides are easier to break down compared to long chain triglycerides. They go straight to the liver and are directly used as a rapid energy source, regardless of the fact that it is a lipid and not a carbohydrate. So at this side, you can see that is an example of medium chain triglyceride. Next slide, please. It also boosts skin health. So virgin coconut oil is used to increase the moisture content of the skin. It prevents excessive water loss and is known to be used as protection from infectious agents. Lauric acid has properties that protect the skin from infectious agents, but more on that later. VCO is also known to reduce mild symptoms of atopic dermatitis, hence it lessens the skin inflammation. Next slide, please. Okay, so it also improves oral health. So oil pulling or using VCO as a mouthwash kills bacteria present in the mouth because of components present in the oil like lauric acid. Next slide, please. So VCO is also an antioxidant because it aids in the neutralization of free radicals. Antioxidants present in VCO are known to have an anti-inflammatory and brain protective properties. VCO exhibited an inhibitory effect on chronic inflammation by reducing the transudative weight,
granuloma formation, and serum alkaline phosphate activity. Next slide, please. Lastly, VCO has anti-inflammatory properties. So, a specific fatty acid found in virgin coconut oil is called lauric acid, which I mentioned earlier. It is a powerful acid that can destroy the membrane of the bacteria. This specific component of VCO is used as an antimicrobial agent called monolaurin, which fights pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, and yeast. So actually, more research shows that lauric acid has the ability to prevent bacteria from multiplying without destroying the bacteria itself. Hence, it is called a bacteriostatic agent. Lauric acid disintegrates the virus envelope and inhibits the late maturation stage in the replicative cycle. It also prevents the binding of viral proteins to the host cell membrane. So, next slide, please. So now that we have established the functions and benefits of virgin coconut oil, let us now go to the results and efficacy of VCO as COVID-19 treatment, which will be reported by my groupmate, Hailey Sumbilan.
Thank you, Zoe. So, gamay na lang guys, kapit lang. So, first off, let us see the results of a certain study conducted by a group of Filipinos with expertise in the chemistry and food and nutrition fields. So, this group conducted the study to observe the effectiveness of VCO in lowering the CRP or C-reactive protein levels of COVID patients. So in this portion, the findings of the study would be discussed in detail. Next slide, please. The table shown displays the distribution of participants by their CRP levels of the group treated with virgin coconut oil and the untreated group through each time period. So in the VCO group, 24 out of 29 participants attained normal CRP levels by the end of the intervention. For the control group, only 16 out of 28, almost half of the group, achieved normal CRP levels. Next slide, please. So this figure indicates the percentage of participants with diminishing symptoms of each group per day. The VCO group, represented by the blue colored bars, shows no COVID symptoms by day 18, while the symptoms of the control group, represented by the red colored bars, still persisted until day 23. Next slide, please. So next, the efficacy of VCO as COVID treatment will be discussed. The following topics will be tackled, which are the adverse effects, beneficial effects, and gaps of VCO as COVID treatment. So starting with the adverse effects, a review study about VCO states that there are no significant side effects recorded of VCO when used as a dietary supplement from 4 to 6 weeks with dosages of 30 to 50 ml per day. So next, the beneficial effects. So in line with the results of the study tackled previously, they indicate that VCO does fasten the recovery of COVID patients. The results support the antiviral and anti-inflammatory characteristics of VCO. And lastly, the gaps of the study. So the study was only limited to COVID patients with mild symptoms. Patients with a history of heart ailments and have high cholesterol were excluded from the study because, again, as mentioned by Zoe, VCO is saturated fat that can increase LDL or low-density lipoprotein cholesterol in the body. Next slide, please. So Dina Vittorillo will discuss the conclusion.
So
finally, we are in the last part of the webinar today. So next slide, please. Let me share to you the overall insights of our group. But before that, let me show you the coconut that is the main topic of our webinar. So here, tada. So again, it has been proven that the VCO is safe to be used as a part of a dietary supplements as there is no side effects from it. Using VCO in COVID-19 as part of a supplement has shown that it will have a faster recovery from the COVID-19 disease. Using VCO is only advisable to patients of COVID-19 that has shown a mild symptoms only. Mild symptoms like fever, cough, shortness of breath, tiredness, body ache, headache, and others. Next slide, please. So using the VCO has been used in clinical trials nowadays due to its component of having an anti-inflammatory and antiviral properties that can help the mild symptoms of the virus in the body to return to the normal levels. Since VCO is a processed natural oil from the fresh mature coconut kernel, it has an anti-inflammatory property which inhibits chronic inflammation by reducing transitive weight, granuloma formation, and serum alkaline phosphate activity. Moderate analgesic effect on the acetic acid-induced writing response, as well as an antipyretic effect in yeast-induced hyperthemia. VCO effectively lowers the C-reactive protein levels among the patients who had cases of COVID-19, in which the meals of the patients were mixed with VCO for faster recovery from the virus. Intake of VCO can be used as an adjunct therapy for improving the health of the individual, not just from the COVID virus, but to other illnesses also. So next slide, please. So these are the personal message from the group in which researching of the usages of VCO and the advantages to us Filipinos, as the Philippines is one of the countries that are the major exports of coconuts and the virgin coconut oil. In 2019 alone, the Philippines has exported $983 million in coconut oil, in which the main destinations were the United States, Netherlands, Malaysia, Germany, and China. So further clinical and observational studies are needed to confirm the positive effects and advantages of the ingestion of VCO as a potential therapy and supplement for COVID-19, since COVID-19 is further to be examined on its potential treatments, including the VCO. Again, VCO is only used as a supplement in the clinical trials nowadays, as it is still needed to be further examined. Next slide, please. So lastly, in relating the biochemistry to real-life situations, with the help of biochemistry, researchers are able to identify the necessary treatments for COVID-19 and other viruses that may harm a body. Researching the biochemistry in COVID-19 has helped the researchers in generating vaccines and test kits that is used around the world. Studying biochemistry has served its function in understanding the biological process that need possible evidence to prove its claim of such diseases. So lastly, biochemistry provides the knowledge of chemical reactions of substances in living organisms. So next slide, please. So these are the references we use for the topic, and that would be all for Team 5 of the section Chemistry and Etch. Thank you for listening.
Definitely not the least indeed, Mars. That was a very lovely presentation, guys. Right, Mars?
Oh, sorry. Lovely is one way to describe that, Gab. But how about you guys? I bet you're all amazed by group number 5's presentation. Very shocking, right? Let's hear your thoughts out. The question table is now open. All right, here. First, we have question from Johanna of Team 4. In terms of structure and function of the proteins found in COVID-19 virus, you mentioned S proteins, which are important for binding. Can you tell us more about this?
Hello, Joanna. Thank you for that question. But first, I would like to give a shout out to Team 1 for allowing me to learn about their webinar. What I learned was that the spike protein of COVID-19 plays a key role in the receptor recognition and cell membrane fusion process. So that is its two roles. This is because they are the first structural proteins that are able to interact with the human cell first, since they are found in the surface of the virus. So you're probably wondering, how do they work? Well, the S proteins bind to a receptor called an angiotensin converting enzyme. Where siya og hacker to hack its way into the host cells in order to replace the code. Unya, iyang i-produce nga code kay mga code sa virus. Busa maka-able siya og replicate. So, when the S protein binds to the receptor, a TM protease and proteaserine promotes virus entry into the cell, which is activated by the S protein. So, once the virus enters the cell, the genetic information or the viral RNA is released such that the polyproteins are translated from the RNA genome, and replication and transcription of the viral RNA genome. Tapos, it occurs in a protein cleavage and assembly of the replicase transcriptase complex. So, viral RNA is replicated and structural proteins are synthesized. They are assembled and are packaged in the host cell, after which viral particles are released. Basically, everything happens like a company. So, kani ang mga S proteins, kay sila ang mga delivery man na mag-deliver padulong sa sulod, which tapos ang kaning yung mga DNA kay mo na siyang CEO. That's all. Thank you.
Wonderfully explained. Thank you, Ali. So it's a very detailed explanation, right? Next question from Andre from Team 1. He wants to know, how does virgin oil attack or treat COVID-19?
So I will be answering that question. So thank you for, actually, that's a very interesting question. So actually, VCO contains lauric acid and monolaurin, as mentioned earlier. So what it does, it disintegrates the virus membrane and gina-inhibit po niya ang virus na so that it will not mature, and it prevents the binding of viral proteins to the host cell membrane. So as mentioned earlier, VCO has immunomodulatory effects. So it inhibits the cytokines of COVID-19. Ang cytokines are the small proteins that are essential for viruses to grow. So mag-spread siya. So if you inhibit the cytokines, or the main protein that spreads the virus inside the body, then dili na siya mag-spread, if that makes sense. So the inhibition of these proteins will hinder the spreading of the virus inside the body. I hope I was able to explain it.
Thank you, Zoe, for that answer. Very, very well explained. So next question from Johanna of Team 4. In terms of from Bettina pala of Team 2. Is this done? Wait. Char, okay. Let's move on to question from Team 3. What are the anti-inflammatory responses of VCO?
So, hello. Ako din mag-answer na. So again, since the coconut has a property which is the fatty acids, it has shown nga na siya anti-inflammatory properties. So in which the anti-inflammatory responses inhibits the chronic inflammation by reducing the transitive weight, granuloma formation, and serum alkaline phosphate activity, as what I have mentioned earlier.
So moderate analgesic effect on the acetic acid-induced writing response, as well as an antipyretic effect in yeast-induced hyperthemia. So I hope that answers your question. Ta-da! Coconut.
Thank you, Dina, sorry. Thank you very much for answering that question. From last but not the least, question from Samantha of Team 2. What is C-reactive protein?
So I will answer that question. So C-reactive protein is produced by the liver, and it is released when there is inflammation in the body. And in relating to COVID-19, if a person is infected with COVID-19, one of its symptoms is inflammation in the lungs. So if there is an increase of CRP levels or C-reactive protein, it indicates that there is inflammation in the body. So that is what C-reactive protein is.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Actually, isa pa ako question from Team 4 by Angel. And in terms of structure and function of the proteins found in COVID-19 virus, you mentioned S proteins, which are important for binding. Can you tell us more about this?
Ano po, na-answer na ganina.
Manaday. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Murag, everyone has been constantly paying attention, and that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. It just really shows how the class perceives biochemistry.
Definitely. Before we end, may we ask Ma'am Jib once again to give us a closing message, and the virtual floor is all yours, ma'am.